So like incest was not on my bingo card for this episode. Oh my God. Like, what do you even do when you find out that the woman you're in love with, like the woman you had been dating for several years, happens to have the same dad as you? Like, where do you even go from here? Hello. Today we're going to be talking about episodes 9 and 10 of the K-drama Buried Hearts. If you're new here, welcome. I'm Jess. I love K-dramas and I just want to chat about them. And don't forget to subscribe to be notified of upcoming videos. So I know this video is like several weeks late, but I'm here and we have lots to talk about. So get comfy, grab a drink, and let's just chat about it. Today we're going to be doing things a little bit differently. So typically I'll focus on the characters and the character relationships, but for this video we're just going to be focusing on the major plot lines from this set of episodes, and that includes DongJu's revenge, secret family, and DongJu's true identity. Starting with Act 1, DongJu's revenge, episode 9 picks up exactly where we left off in last week's episode with DongJu being attacked at the hospital, but son-in-law jumps in to actually save DongJu's life because he overheard his son Tae-hyun when he was at the hospital stating that he is a little suspicious of his father because when he called 911, or I guess the equivalent in Korea, which is 119, he heard the operator say that they never received a phone call even though his father had said that he made the call. So he's very suspicious of him in that moment. And because of that, he is kind of trying to be a good person. So he jumps in and helps him. And then when he does, DongJu makes it super clear that he remembers everything. Like, this man says, I have my full memory back. And I remembered that you were the one who tried to shoot me and tried to kill me on the boat. And I will never forget it. And it's great, because now son-in-law kind of really doesn't have any options. He pretty much has to bend to the will of DongJu, and DongJu makes it clear that because he attempted to kill him, that makes him an attempted murder, and he will be holding that over his head the entire time. But at the same time, son-in-law doesn't seem super fazed by it. Maybe it was just like the acting or the emotions being shown, but son-in-law for the most part just goes along with whatever DongJu says. And part of the reason I think that is because he's worried about his son. And his son and DongJu have a very close relationship as shown on the show. And it also seems like with son-in-law and son-in-law's wife, they're pretty much doing everything it takes to protect their son and make sure that their son eventually becomes the heir of Daesun. So I think son-in-law to an extent is worried that DongJu would hurt his son, which honestly doesn't even make sense because DongJu likes him, and I don't think DongJu is the type of person who would take out the son in an effort to get revenge on him. But we'll see. So moving on to villain number 2, who is Grandpa Prosecutor. At the end of the last episode, he was sending someone to harm Unam in some way, but DongJu, being the man that he is, attractively foils Grandpa Prosecutor's plan, and Unam is spared from any harm. But not just that. In his plan, he goes above and beyond. Like, he goes above Grandpa Prosecutor and tracks down the elder, who is essentially the person that Grandpa Prosecutor reports to and is the actual owner of the slush fund. So because he's able to track him down and at the same time kind of blackmail him, the elder calls up Grandpa Prosecutor and says that, hey, you guys need to cut this out because DongJu was so nice enough to give us the password for the slush fund so that we can be on good sides. So what's going to happen is that DongJu will be the one managing the slush fund from now on, which is kind of crazy to think about. If we go back to like episode 3, where DongJu like comes into the room and he's like on the ground bleeding, and then now he's able to like walk in with so much confidence because he's basically stepping on Grandpa Prosecutor. And Grandpa Prosecutor is a little annoyed at this whole situation, but at the same time, he's also kind of happy that they're doing some sort of like ceasefire and keeping the peace. And my man DongJu replies with my favorite line, which was, this is a ceasefire, but I'm going to get my revenge, and it's going to be slow and painful and satisfying. And it was so good when he said it, but it will never compare to, I forgot what episode it was, where he said the line, You need to exit the world in the way you came in. So since you're older than me, I'm going to be the one to kill you and take you out. Like, oh, he's so good. He's just so good. And then in this batch of episodes, we also find out about something called the Dandelion Files. And I'm going to be real with you. I still don't fully understand exactly what that is. The only thing I know is that it seems to be some sort of secret, like, government operation that happened, and Grandpa Prosecutor was involved. And it very much feels like this is Grandpa Prosecutor's weakness. And honestly, the only weakness the show has shown us so far, because Grandpa Prosecutor is actively trying to track down these files, which technically are not supposed to exist. And at the same time, DongJu is also trying to track it down so that he can take out Grandpa Prosecutor. So moving on to act number 2, which is Secret Family. This is actually the plot line that I have been the most interested in since the beginning of the show. And in last week's episode, I specifically mentioned that I wanted to get more progression on the storyline involving the chairman and his secret son, because I feel like it is very pivotal to the show, actually, and it kind of connects a lot of the different plot lines that are going on, as well as I feel like it also will relate to the plot line of DongJu's secret identity. So we already know that the chairman is starting to forget things because of his illness. And in this episode, it takes it a step further. So the chairman goes outside, and while he's on a phone call, first of all, he doesn't have any shoes. He forgets where he is and essentially gets lost and is unable to get back to the mansion. First of all, I have a lot of questions, because how was it that he was able to, one, just walk outside without anyone noticing? Specifically because he is the chairman of a really, really big company. There's no way that he didn't have some sort of security. He also has a secretary. He also has people to drive him around. How is it that no one noticed that he left his house? A little weird. So as he's on a bus stop, just trying to figure out what to do and how he can go home, in comes his son, who is on a motorcycle, and his son remembers him because he's seen him at the bakery, where the chairman was low-key kind of stalking him, because they show a clip of them at the bakery, and it's essentially his son is at the front, and then the chairman is by the window, and he's just literally just staring at him, not even making it discreet or anything. He's obviously and blatantly staring at him, and then his son will look at him, and then the chairman looks down and starts eating his food, and then after a couple of seconds the chairman starts staring at him again, and then the son notices again, and it happens over and over and over again. But it does cause the son to actively remember him. So when he sees him at the bus stop and he notices that the chairman doesn't have any shoes on, he, in this really sweet moment, it gives him shoes that I think he had been saving, and then he offers the chairman a ride, and then we have this great moment where they're just kind of bonding on the motorcycle, and it seems for the first time in a long time, the chairman is just carefree and having fun, and at the same time being with his son. He is starting to remember, I guess it's his memories of them spending time together when his son was a little kid. But obviously, neither of them really fully remember or understand, the moment that's happening right then and there. And then eventually the chairman is able to navigate to his house. And as he and his son pull up in the motorcycle, everyone honestly is kind of shocked, because they've been looking for him, and it's really weird for their father to just be on this motorcycle with this young man. And then what makes it a little bit weirder is the chairman starts referencing to his son as his son in front of everyone, and people are shocked and confused, but obviously they don't believe him, because they know that he's been forgetting things, and obviously also they don't realize that he has a secret son. But some people do clock this, and that's because they already know what's going on. So I just want to say, I have to give a shout out to Secretary Gong, who is running this household. She knows about DongJu's identity. She knows about the secret son. She was also the person who was able to calm down the chairman's daughter when she got physically abusive with someone in the family earlier in the episode. And then at the same time, even hubby prosecutor at one point when he was talking to someone mentioned that even though the chairman is like at the top, it really is the secretary who seems like she is the one who's in charge and running things. Because when the chairman mentioned that that was his son, she just didn't seem fazed. If anything, the chairman's daughter went up to her and said, "Oh, the son is back. What are we going to do about this?" I love her, and I just need for her to be on DongJu's side, and like all will be right with the world. And what happened as a result? We learned that the chairman's daughter actually made a deal with the secret son's mother, who I'm calling news anchor because that was her job before all of this happened. But they made a deal that the son would stay away from Daesun group, essentially because the daughter didn't want him to end up becoming the heir. And now that the son has been seen around her father, as well as he showed up to the house, and then she has also seen him with DongJu, she's getting a little annoyed with the whole situation, and she obviously like threatens them and says that she will make them disappear if they join hands with DongJu. And DongJu doesn't care. DongJu is so unfazed. If anything, DongJu literally like threatens her outside of the bakery, and she's like flabbergasted. Like she's just like, how dare this little kid who is beneath me try and threaten me with a secret son and take over this company. And for DongJu, this is continuing to be part of his plan because this was the chairman's wish for his son to eventually join the household, and that's what he's actively trying to do. I will say there was one part that I was a little confused on. Would definitely love some clarification if you guys fully understood what he said, but it sounded like DongJu told the news anchor that in order for her son to become part of the household, she would also have to take her role as the chairman's wife. And I think I was a little confused on that part. But also, like, imagine being the daughter and you just threatened this lady, and now she's gonna be announced to the world as his wife. And it's not even just bad enough that she's gonna be announced as his wife. The whole world is gonna find out that he has a secret son who will now be like first in line. And what's probably also gonna happen, none of this is a K-drama, is that they're probably all gonna end up living in the same household as well. Like, that's so wild. Honestly, rich people problems. Last point on this is there was a scene where we saw DongJu and news anchor talking about whether or not it would be the right time to tell the son about who his father was, as well as Daesun group. And I think they did end up telling him. We don't really see much of his reaction aside from going outside to smoke and then just being in disbelief about the whole thing. Honestly, I would love to learn more about his perspective, how he feels about the situation, and if he even wants to join Daesun group going forward. And another thing I'm really interested in is the future dynamic that's going to happen between the son, the baker's son, as well as Tae-hyun, who is the chairman's daughter's son, because it very much seems like these are the two sides in terms of who will eventually be the heir of Daesun. But at the same time, these two young men are very much similar ages, and they're also very curious about each other because anytime the baker's son comes to the house, Tae-hyun seems very interested in him and wanting to learn more about him. So I do hope that they can form some sort of, I almost said brother. I really almost said some sort of like brothership, but I guess at that point, one of them is technically his uncle, which is a little weird, but that doesn't matter. That doesn't matter. I do hope that they can form some sort of like friendship or familiar relationship, despite the fact that there are these feuding families, even though they're all technically related, trying to get that spot of who's going to be Daesun's heir. Speaking of other people with daddy issues, let's get into act number 3, which is DongJu's identity. And oh my god, this situation is so messy. But oh my god, okay, let's just break down all of the information that we learned in these set of episodes step by step. First of all, we find out that DongJu and his late sister are not related, or at least they don't have the same father. And this is kind of a big revelation, especially to DongJu, because part of the reason he went to business school as well as joined Daesun Group is because he wanted to build himself up in order to be worthy of being able to visit his father, who he had thought abandoned them to go move to the US. And he did all this honestly just because he wanted his dad to be proud of him. But it all kind of feels in vain when he finds out that his dad is actually not his dad. And then it's confirmed by like reliable sources who are Madam P, the person who raised him along with his mom, as well as hubby prosecutor's dad, who is a well-known acquaintance of his father. Number two, when DongJu goes to see Madam P, she gives him the clothes that he was wearing the day he wandered into his mom's house. And as they're looking at the clothes, they happen to find a Polaroid photo in the clothes with a photo of a woman, a man, and the man is holding a child who Madam P says is DongJu. Number three, let's get into the photo. In another scene, we see good doctor's father, who happens to be friends with Unam's dad, who died, as well as Unam's stepfather, who is son-in-law. And he has a bunch of old photos on his phone. And as he's transferring them, he finds the same photo that DongJu found in his pocket. And he sends that photo over to son-in-law, talking about, oh, wow, look at this beautiful moment from the past. And he is being very nostalgic about the whole thing. Number four, we find out that Chairman's daughter, who is son-in-law's wife, who is Unam's mom, was the one who actually took that original photo and was there that day. And in addition to that, during this little snippet, we find out, or we see from facial expressions, that she has some sort of like deep hatred or something for this little kid, because there's a scene as they're getting ready to take the photo. The little kid asks the man to lift him up, and as he's doing something, you just see her face like literally like shooting lasers at this little kid, kind of inciting that she is for some reason jealous of whatever is happening at the moment. Number five, it seems like Grandpa Prosecutor also knew who DongJu was as a little kid. So there's a scene where the henchman is digging into DongJu's background, I think around the time when he started working at Daesun. And then when he shows a photo, the Grandpa Prosecutor's wife instantly recognizes the kid and calls the kid by their given name, which is the same name that DongJu was using when he had amnesia. And as she goes digging for photos, she finds photos, and it's exactly the same photo of DongJu with the same hairstyle. And at the same time, Grandpa Prosecutor starts to get really defensive and angry about the whole thing. I don't know why, but something just about the kid just like triggers it in him. And as he's looking at the photo and as his wife is like reminiscing about like what specific moment that photo was taken from, he keeps insisting that that's not him and that she's mistaking. And then to the point where she also like agrees. And I think part of it is just because she wanted to end that conversation. Number six, which is kind of the wildest one of this list. DongJu shows Unam the photo that he found in her pocket, and she was like, oh my god, where did you get this photo? And then she points at the guy who is holding DongJu, and she says, this is my father. And Madam P had told DongJu that the man holding him is most likely his father. So like incest was not on my bingo card for this episode. Oh my god. Like, what do you even do when you find out that the woman you're in love with, like the woman you had been dating for several years, happens to have the same dad as you? Like, where do you even go from here? And the show is really trying hard to make it seem like they're siblings. And honestly, I'm not really mad at it. Like, this is some soap opera level shit that I honestly live for. But I don't think, like, I really don't think the show is bold enough to go there for the remaining episodes. Instead, Conspiracy Corner, what I think it's going to be is I think DongJu is somehow going to be related to Grandpa Prosecutor. I don't know, like, I can just like feel it in my bones. For one hand, it would be like amazing because they have this really intense rivalry and they've had it from the beginning. It would be like amazing for them to essentially find out later on that they're somehow related, even though they've been trying to fight, and that it would probably lead to DongJu killing someone in his family. But I feel like Grandpa Prosecutor deserves it. I don't know. To me, it just doesn't really make sense for him to be the heir of Daesan, just because I feel like we already have so many competing people. Like, in addition to DongJu, if he was the heir, we also have the baker's son, and then we also have Taehyun, who he's close to. It doesn't really make sense for him to be thrown into the mix of another person who is related to this family, as opposed to being part of the family that actually is trying to take them down. I feel like that just makes more sense. And I also think that if he were to be the heir, it would really complicate his relationship with those two men who he has essentially become more of like a brother figure to. So I'm hoping that it's actually going to be Grandpa Prosecutor or something else, and that he is not the heir for Daesan. Also because I don't know. I don't really want them to be related, even though I don't like ship them and don't want them to end up together. I don't want them to be siblings as well. Overall thoughts on the set of episodes, I really did enjoy them, and as I said earlier, I really did like that we were starting to get more progression on the storyline with the chairman's son, because I feel like it kind of was put on a back burner for a little bit. And in terms of these episodes, I will say that episode 9 was more so of my favorite, just because, as I said before, I tend to prefer the episodes where the plot is moving a lot more, as well as ones where there's more action. And I feel very much so, specifically in episode 9, that there were a lot of kind of like back and forth between the characters, and the revenge was actually like picking up a little bit, versus episode 10, where I felt was a little bit on the slower side. And I have noticed that the show tends to kind of pair like one that is more heavy on the action versus one which is kind of a little bit slower, and it has people kind of like talking, and there's kind of a little bit of like 4D chess going on, which is fine. I am interested in seeing how the show wraps up, because there are about 6 episodes left, but we still have so much plot to cover. So I guess we're gonna see how that goes. Based on the preview for the next set of episodes, it seems like DongJu is going to tell Secretary Gong that he has recovered his memories, as well as show her the photo of him as a little kid. And it seems like we are finally going to figure out what happened the night of the car accident. So I am very much looking forward to that. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe. In the comments below, let me know what you thought of these episodes, what your theories are, and how do you feel about the show kind of hinting that they might be siblings? I'm very interested in other people's thoughts on that. And on that note, have a lovely day, and I will see you guys next week.